Hello everyone and welcome back to the Railway Shed. Today I thought I'd make more of a retrospective video, looking at how sustainable this hobby is to this generation. What spurred on this idea was the recent Hornby 2024 range announcement. It seems to me like the main manufacturers of model railway related items, such as Hornby, Bachmann and others, have more focus on bringing better quality models at a higher price point than making smaller, lower budget models which may introduce a family or a child to the hobby of railway modelling. So, in this video, I'll be sharing my opinion. How viable is this hobby to a new generation? How will people get into this hobby? How can they afford it? And how really sustainable is the model railway hobby going into the future? So let's take this all the beginning. Well, at least for me. Like many train-obsessed kids over the past 75 years, the main thing that got me into the hobby of railways, and by expansion railway modelling, was Thomas the Tank Engine. The cheeky blue tank engine and his friends inspired me and helped me grow up into the man I am today. He taught me valuable life lessons, how friendship is truly the greatest gift of all, as well as many other things. But most importantly, well, at least to this context, is how he got me into railway modelling. When I was 4 or 5 or so, my granddad purchased me the Hornby Thomas passenger and goods set. This was my first ever foray into railway modelling. The set included a Hornby Thomas, a Hornby Annie and Clarabelle, as well as a few goods wagons for him to pull, along with the basic oval and track pack A. Now, for the time, I can't imagine the set costing much over £100. And really, that was it. Ever since then, I've been growing my collection, first collecting more and more train sets, then, when gradually getting older, getting more and more engines and rolling stock, and even a layout for my 10th birthday. An aspect of Thomas I hold really dear to my interest in railways is how realistic it was. Not in the sense of the stories being realistic, but how they portrayed railways. The engines in the era I grew up with, mainly the Miller era and early Andrew Brenner era, showed the engines being engines. They weren't jumping around, they weren't bending the laws of physics. If I was to go to a heritage railway when I was young, I would immediately recognise a real-life engine as the same thing I saw on screen, and I knew its limitations. Growing up with that kind of era helped me develop my interest in railways, eventually learning about real engines and real railway history. But now at least, I don't really see any way young children, especially Generation Alpha, are supposed to get into railways and then by extension railway modelling. I mean, if you look at Thomas the Tank Engine, All Engines Go, yes, it's cartoony, it bends the laws of physics so much that they use being a train as a limitation rather than being its core appeal. It's just alike anything of its competitors, like Paw Patrol, Bluey, or Peppa Pig. There's nothing that differentiates it, there's nothing that makes it stand out and provide a lifelong interest. Sure, there may be 1 or 2 instances where children get hooked into the series, but I find that incredibly rare nowadays because of the distance between the two things. Now, by no means of the way was the early era of what I grew up with Thomas in any way good, but at least it did portray the characters as steam engines and helped me create that link between the real railways that I hold so dear now and the Treaky Blue tank engine. Now, let's get into some other aspects that I think are incredibly harmful to the model railway hobby. Firstly, the prices. As you can see from what I'm showing on screen now, prices for basic railroad engines are extortionate. £65 for a basic 060 tank engine, of which you can find second-hand in model shops for between £25 and £30. It's just extortionate. As well as starter sets being so much more expensive than they used to be, but offering so much less to hook you into the hobby. Recent starter sets, like this, have so little in them. You have a basic 040 that we've got thousands of times before, a single wagon, and perhaps a single four-wheeled coach, as well as an oval of track. There was times not so long ago where that set, or something of its counterpart, could be found in an Asda for about £30 to £40. This is almost double the price. For a set at that price range, when I was young and getting into model railways, you would get so much more. Sure, you'd get the basic 040, but you'd also get a fine selection of coaches and wagons, usually getting roughly 4 or 5. Track Pack A, as well as the basic oval and some more straights, so you had a point, which allows so much more enjoyability rather than watching a basic engine go round in a loop. So let's take a look at Hornby's 2024 range. Let's see what they've got to offer for this new year of railway modelling. They've promised big things, so I'm expecting big things as well. It's utterly ludicrous. There's nothing for young modellers to get into the hobby. All they have announced is multiple limited edition engines and limited edition sets that cost you back around £75 at the minimum for something so basic. If you look at these 040s that are inspired by the old Triagnellis, I mean, £50 for that engine? Really? Sure, they're limited edition, but in my eyes that just says, we made very few of these because they wouldn't sell very well. And then for engines, mainly just repaints of older toolings. And I mean, really? You're releasing the Queen's Coronation engines this year? This will be the 2-year anniversary of Queen Elizabeth dying. So I really don't see how it's viable to sell engines in a livery of a dead queen. Now, as they said, they may be introducing and announcing newer models in the coming months, but at the moment, they've got everything backwards. I mean, look at what's happened to Hattons. The market of model railways is changing even more than it has previously. It's shifting away from a hobby for the whole family to share because it's too expensive. It's becoming more for pensioners who have a great lump of money to spend on engines and rolling stock to make a perfect railway, a perfect depiction of what life was like when these railways were operating. But for a majority of people, this isn't what they want. The model railway hobby, for me at least, was so appealing because it could be whatever you want. You could run any train, any consist, on any layout you could dream of. It doesn't matter if it was a Thomas and Friends engine or a real one. It could all run together and be your own little railway. So then, ultimately, I pose the question, how sustainable is this hobby? Well, without major change from these manufacturers, I really don't think it is too sustainable. Sure, there'll be fandoms such as the Thomas one to keep it alive for a while, but eventually, more and more companies, if they go along the way they did, will have the same fate as Hatton's, slowly fading into more obscurity, till eventually, this hobby that was once widespread and was every boy's dream present on Christmas morning will become little more than a distant memory. Thank you oh so much for watching this video of my thoughts of the current model railway climate. I was intending to make a Trackmaster collection video this week, but this just felt more important with the recent events going on. Thank you so much for watching, and see you all later.